Good morning, students. Today we'll do a very short topic, that is the uterine tubes. This also comes in a 5 marks question. So, uterine tubes are also known as fallopian tubes. If we see the definition, they are tortuous ducts which convey oocyte from the ovary to the uterus. Tortuous means lengthy with twists and turns. It is kind of a tube with various turns and twists in it. The spermatozoa introduced into the vagina passes up into the uterus and from there into the uterine tubes. Fertilization usually takes place in the lateral part of the tube. So, here the sperms enter and then they pass in this particular area of the uterine tubes, and fertilization usually take place in this particular area, that is the ampulla of the uterine tubes. Then situation, they are situated in the free upper margin of the broad ligament of the uterus. Free upper margin of the broad ligament of the uterus. So these are the tubes. The broad ligament was here, I showed you last time. This is the broad ligament. This whole thing is the broad ligament. So they are situated in the free upper margin of the broad ligament of the uterus. Dimensions: each uterine tube is 10 centimeters long. At the lateral end, the uterine tubes open into the peritoneal cavity through its abdominal ostium. So each uterine tube is 10 centimeters long. The length is 10 centimeters long and the ostium is about 3 millimeter in diameter. Then the subdivisions, how the uterus is subdivided. So the lateral end of the uterine tubes is shaped like a funnel and is therefore called the infundibulum. It bears number of finger-like processes called the fimbria and is therefore called fimbriated end. One of the fimbria is longer than the other and is attached to the tubal pole of the ovary. It is also known as the ovarian fimbria. Now you can see in this diagram, this is the infundibulum. This is the infundibulum. These are the fimbria. This is the most lateral end of the fallopian tube. It is funnel shaped, that's why it is known as infundibulum. And these are the fimbria. So one of the fimbria is longer, it is the longest, and is attached to the tubal pole of the ovary. Here, like this, you can see in this diagram. This one you can see, this is the longest one and it's attached to the tubal pole of the ovary. Here you can see this one is attached to the tubal pole of the ovary. That's why it is known as the ovarian fimbria. The part of the uterine tube medial to the infundibulum is called the ampulla. This is thin-walled, dilated and tortuous and forms approximately the lateral 2/3 or 6 to 7 centimeters of the tube. It arches over the upper pole of the ovary. The ampulla is about 4 millimeter in diameter. So the next part of the uterine tube, just next to the infundibulum, is known as the ampulla. It is also tortuous, like it has many twists and turns in it. It is 6 to 7 centimeters in length and is 4 millimeters in diameter. It arches over the upper pole of the ovary. So like it arches over the upper pole, you can see. This is the ampulla. It arches over the upper pole, like it's arching like this. This is the infundibulum, and then the ampulla, it is arching over the upper pole of the ovary. Next is the isthmus succeeds the ampulla. It is narrow, round and cord-like and it forms approximately the medial 1/3 or 2 to 3 centimeters of the tube. So the part next to the ampulla is the isthmus. It is rounded and cord-like. You can see rounded and cord-like, and it is 2 to 3 centimeters long. The next part is the intramural part. What is intramural part? The uterine or the intramural or the interstitial part of the tube is about 1 centimeters long and lies within the wall of the uterus. It opens at the superior angle of the uterine cavity by the narrow uterine ostium. This ostium is about 1 millimeter in diameter. It opens at the superior angle of the uterine cavity by a narrow uterine ostium. You can see here it's entering inside the uterus, therefore it is also known as intramural interstitial uterine part of the fallopian tube. Next, the course and relation is not very much important because it comes in a 5 marks question. The blood supply, it is supplied by the uterine arteries, and the veins, they drain into the uterine vein. All the veins, they unite together, drain into the pampiniform plexus of the ovary and into the uterine veins. Then comes the nerve supply. The nerve supplies, the uterine tubes are supplied by both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. The sympathetic nerves is T10 to L2, and the parasympathetic nerves are derived from the vagus nerve and from the pelvic splanchnic nerves S2, S3 and S4. And what are the function? The upper one, the sympathetic nerves, they contain both visceral afferent and efferent fibers. The later are vasomotor and perhaps stimulate the tubal peristalsis. So the sympathetic nerves causes the peristalsis of the uterine tubes. And why the peristalsis is important? For the movement of the sperm for ovulation, and then after for the fertilization, and after the fertilization, the peristalsis is important for the movement of the fertilized ovum into the uterus. Like the peristalsis here causes the sperm to reach this particular area where the fertilization takes place, and after fertilization, the peristalsis helps in the movement of the fertilized ovum into the uterus for its implantation. Next, the parasympathetic nerve, they inhibit peristalsis and produces vasodilation. So after the work is done of the sympathetic supply, like peristalsis is important for the movement of the ovum and the sperm, so then it inhibits the peristalsis and produces vasodilation. Now comes the clinical anatomy. So first we'll do the clinical anatomy of the ovaries. So the ovaries, sometimes the prolapse of the ovaries can occur. Ovaries are frequently displaced on the pouch of Douglas, where they can be palpated by per vaginum examination. So what was the pouch of Douglas? The pouch of Douglas is between the uterus and the rectum. Recto-uterine pouch is also known as pouch of Douglas. So the ovaries can displace there. Ovarian cyst. The developmental arrest of the ovarian follicle may result in the formation of one or more small ovarian cysts. Nowadays you can hear polycystic ovarian disease, polycystic ovary. So this is the same. So what happens? The follicles are the sacs in which the ovum grows. And when the follicle rupture, the ovum just escapes from there. But if the follicle is not able to rupture, it causes the formation of cyst. The fluid etc. gets trapped inside it and it causes the cyst. Multiple small theca lutein cysts involve both the ovaries is called Steen-Leventhal syndrome. Steen-Leventhal syndrome is also known as polycystic ovarian disease, in which these kind of cysts, because of the developmental arrest of the ovarian follicles, causes cysts in both the ovaries, and this is known as Steen-Leventhal syndrome. And this syndrome is characterized by mild hirsutism, that is the hair can grow on the face, chest areas, deep voice, secondary amenorrhea, and cystic enlargement of both the ovaries. Cyst can cause the enlargement of both the ovaries. Amenorrhea can occur, that is the menstruation can stop completely. Then comes carcinoma. Carcinoma of the ovary is very common and can occur in the ovaries also. Ovaries sometimes contain the pluripotent cells which may give rise to teratomas, which with the derivatives of different germ layers like bone, cartilage, hair, etc. The adrenal and thyroid tissues may also present in the ovaries. So sometimes the ovary can give rise to teratomas which can contain other cells like bones, cartilage, hair, etc. The adrenal and the thyroid tissues may also present in the ovary. So sometimes the teratomas can occur which can contain tissue of bones, cartilage, hair, thyroid tissues, etc. and can cause the abnormal functioning because of these tissues. On the other hand, the accessory ovaries may occur in the mesovarium or in the adjacent part of the broad ligament of the uterus. So sometimes extra ovaries, accessory ovaries other than 2, one more ovary can develop in the mesovarium part of the broad ligament. Then the ovaries are the common site for in the abdomen for endometriosis. Now what is endometriosis? Sometimes the tissues that lines the inside of the uterus, the similar tissue can also grow abnormally in the ovaries, fallopian tubes, bowel, etc. And the tissue in the uterus, that is in the endometrium of the uterus, in the menstrual cycle it get inflamed, it breaks and it causes the formation of the menstrual blood. In the same way, these tissues which are similar in structure and function to the endometrial tissues grows in the ovaries and can cause inflammation, can break, can cause bleeding, and this all can cause the formation of cyst in the ovaries. And the cysts which are caused by the endometriosis are known as chocolate cyst. They are different from the ovarian cyst which we studied before. They are different from the ovarian cyst. These are the endometrial cyst, and these cysts causes irritation of the surrounding tissues, can cause scar tissue formation, adhesion. These all are abnormal band of fibrous tissues that can cause the pelvic tissues to stick to the other organs. So this is endometriosis. You will study about endometriosis later in gynecology. Here for the explanation, endometriosis is this condition in which endometrial cyst can occurs in the ovary and they are known as chocolate cyst. Now comes the uterine tubes. I hope you have understood what the uterine tubes are. It is a very short topic, so study as a 5 marks question only. As far as clinical anatomy is there, salpingitis is what? Inflammation of the uterine tubes is called salpingitis because uterine tubes are also known as salpinx, fallopian tubes. So salpinx, the irritation of the inflammation of it is known as salpingitis. Then sterility etc. can occur because of the tubal blockage. Tubal pregnancy, sometimes the fertilized ovum instead of reaching the uterus adheres to the walls of the uterine tubes and start developing there. This is known as tubal pregnancy. The enlarged embryo may lead to rupture of the tube. Now as I told you before, the fertilization takes place in this area, and by peristalsis it reaches in the uterus and their implantation occur. But sometimes it can get stuck in this particular area, and here only the development of the embryo can take place. Now uterus can stretch along with the embryo, the growing embryo, it stretches, but the fallopian tubes does not have that much of place. So when the embryo grows, it starts growing and it causes the rupture of these tubes. So this is known as the rupture or the tubal pregnancy, in which the embryo starts growing in this particular area of the uterine tube. Next, tubectomy. For purpose of family planning, a woman can be sterilized by removing the segment of the uterine tube on both sides. This you will study later. So this is all about the uterine tubes and the clinical anatomy of the ovaries. If you don't understand anything, you can call me and ask your queries.